Welcome to my talk about method validation in a LIMS and Centric lab environment. Today we will learn how to connect your LIMS and CTS systems and transfer your data effortlessly, how to define your calculations and get a detailed report with automatic summaries, how to ensure compliance by managing audit trails, revision history, and signatures. This talk will focus on doing method validation work in an environment where data is gathered from laboratory information systems and chromatography data systems. We'll see how these systems can be connected, the data used and refined with additional calculations to be the foundation of method validation work. Workflows can be defined, and compliance requirements will be met by using highly configurable software systems with compliance to all major regulations with special focus on data integrity. Overview. Depending on the type of data and the underlying method validation requirements, such projects can be demanding, both in terms of data handling efforts and compliance. Projects can be huge: wastewater, environmental analysis, trace analysis, with high data volumes to be transferred. Additional calculations might be necessary to prepare the data for our method validation calculations. All calculations must be either available as standard or be simply defined on a per project basis. The resulting reports must contain both detailed results as well as automatically created summaries, zero-effort reporting. If necessary, additional materials such as documents and images need to be merged with the final document. Whatever information will be generated, it must be usable as printout or document export and available as input feeds for external systems in well-defined formats, for example, database, XML, or JSON. All that must be simple in use and powerful in compliance. Workflows, audit trails, and revision history is mandatory. Guidelines for method validation. Analytical method validation work is based on a variety of guidelines and requirements. ICH, USP, EP, JP, DIN, ISO, FDA, ANVISA, and other regulations are important. These guidelines define the basics of validation work, the purpose, the scope, and what to do. What do we need for our work? The objective of the validation of an analytical procedure is to demonstrate that it is suitable for its intended purpose. Efficiency and data integrity are the most important requirements for method validation software solutions. What does that mean and how can it be achieved? In terms of time from planning to final report and in terms of good and compliance output. Efficiency from planning to final report. The workflow should be well defined. This should be handled in your SOP documents. Easy to understand and easy to follow. Guided by wizards, assistants, to-do lists. Eliminating the need to use unvalidated tools. So no pocket calculator, no Excel, no slide ruler. A validated calculation framework is mandatory, but we need more. Pre-configured or predefined interfaces, so connectors to all important systems like CTS and LIMS. Result sets, well-defined output with no random changes. Layouts, corporate identity including logos, headers, and cover pages. Summaries, easily summarizing a validation project's main results. Formulas, optional report elements for better documentation. But validation projects should not only contain calculations, but all data integrity related info, that is, 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. Data integrity. Full compliance to 21 CFR Part 11 or equivalent regulations like EU GMP Annex 11 are important. Data protection can be guaranteed by software access levels, like logins, roles, and department definitions, and check some protected backend databases like SQL servers. The whole workflow must be completely tracked by means of audit trails, all activities in detail, as well as revision history, searchable and retrievable. Besides validation and Part 11 compliance certificates, a 21 CFR Part 11 compliance response is mandatory. This compliance response provides detailed answers for the requirements of Part 11. It's a mandatory document when using a software in regulated environments. It is part of your software documentation, as well as IQ and OQ protocols and other quality-related paperwork. Workflow. Establishing an optimized workflow with minimum effort. First, templates. The key for an optimized workflow is predefining all aspects of typical method validation work by workflow templates that reduce new projects to a few clicks. Such templates follow your SOPs, contain typical workflow and workloads, and structure your tasks to optimize efficiency and compliance. Communication with your laboratory equipment, like CDS, LIMS, ECM, ERP, or DMS, should be automatic and easy with manual intervention limited to a minimum. Guidelines and validation structure. Guidelines are translated into validation workload, for example, checkpoints, to create and structure validation projects. Testing workload. Your testing workload is defined by your accreditation authority or by your customers, your SOPs, and your personal ambitions. In any case, the testing workload must be well-defined and not random. It must be clear why a specific workflow as well as acceptance checking has been selected. This workflow definition is established as a validation plan that needs to be approved prior to data acquisition start. Custom workflows. Adopting new or changed workflows should be as easy as possible. Graphical design tools, business process managers, allow user-designed workflows without software modification. Different projects require different workflows that can be selected from predefined designs. Integration. How to connect your LIMS and CDS systems and transfer your data effortlessly. Full device integration is the key. Manual data input should be avoided whenever possible. Automatic transfer eliminates the need to control and check manual inputs. All lab systems need to be attached to your method validation software, like CDS, LIMS, ERP, ECM, and DMS. Interface workflow. Interfaces connect your validation projects to external data sources. Typical systems can be, as said before, CDS, LIMS, ERP, and DMS, and other data providers. Data can be retrieved by application APIs, export formats like XML or JSON, or direct database access like Oracle SQL Server or Microsoft SQL Server. In any case, imported data must be protected, that is, handled as read-only, and logged to an audit trail system of your method validation software. Re-importing data must be possible and documented in detail, data before and data after, reason for re-importing, and so on. Interface workflow. Data is automatically transferred. Predefined workflows control data flow and eliminate input errors. Your external interface will provide the structure of your external data, so projects, sequences, and so on, the details of the data, like individual samples and the individual peak results. So creating a new project means you're starting based on an approved template. You connect to a data source like CDS, LIMS, ERP, or ECM. You assign and load your data, and you create the final validation report based on the predefined calculation methods and statistics. You are exporting this final report as a PDF-A, protected and signed. and that is your predefined workflow you should use in compliant method validation. Reporting. How to define your calculations and get a detailed report with automatic summaries. Method validation work is much more than just calculating results. It is setting up your testing workload, both simple and flexible, with final documentation matching customer expectations as well as regulatory requirements. This requires a highly configurable and powerful reporting solution to create documentation templates for all purposes, internal as well as official validation reports. Best practices. Important and frequently used report elements should be available for immediate usage. For example, text blocks, snippet libraries, ease this process and guarantee good reporting quality. This applies to headers, approval sections, cover pages, result and acceptance tables, and lots of other elements. Automatic summaries should be available to ease reporting and to avoid table creation errors, especially in huge projects. Final documentation. Final method validation documentation needs to be easy to understand, well structured, illustrated where necessary, easily summarized to get the main result. Document transfer and protection. Final documents must follow established standards for easy exchange, like PDFA standard, and well protected by secure algorithms like AES encryption. Flexibility. Even a method validation project based on a well-established template might need modifications for a specific pending project. Project fine-tuning. While templates define routine work, it's critical to allow flexibility for each new project. Additional calculations, graphics, and report extensions must be added easily. Hence, it is viable to allow fine-tuning of your project for a specific purpose, for example, different testing workflow, additional calculations, or the modified layout. In any case, such modifications must be fully tracked, the difference to the underlying template explained, and justified in the validation plan. Data integrity. How to ensure compliance by managing audit trails, revision history, and signatures. Maximum level of data integrity. Since your data is worth being protected, all this must be accompanied by a maximum level of data integrity, which means strict access control, detailed traceability, version history, and full 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. Centralized installations, application and database servers are strongly recommended to keep your data safe and to ease application rollouts and maintenance. Installation qualification must be ensured by automated IQ and OQ processes. Tools for QA and IT. Admins and QA have lots of requests for data integrity and consistency checks to be carried out on a regular basis. All these queries can be done based on existing audit trail information and should be available on a single click with graphical output, dashboards, and report output, hot documentation. Summary. Method validation in the LIMS and CDS-centric lab environment. Our goal should be to work as efficient as possible with the highest level of documentation quality. Automatic interfacing your external systems is a workflow must. CDS, LIMS, ERP, ECM, and DMS. Data integrity is a core requirement. Approved templates for routine work are mandatory, but flexibility and fine-tuning of projects are necessary. Tools must be validated and their installation qualified. IQ, OQ, PQ. Thank you very much for your time and attention. In case you would like to contact me for further questions or maybe product documentation or product demonstration, please contact me under jürgen.voorgang@guslab.com. Thank you very much and have a nice day.